To become an architect, it takes years of rigorous study and practice. But does it really prepare you for what's to come?
A lot of people think that the education of an architect is about preparing them for the first year of practice, right? So it's like you go to school, you go to uni, and then you start work. It's a very linear procession of learning, and it is kind of that. But once you graduate from architecture, you come out with this whole big pile of knowledge that you won't get to use on your first day, your first month, or even your first year, or even your first decade of practice. The education of an architect is more about giving you this ball of knowledge that will sit with you for your entire career, that you'll dip into and constantly pull things out at the appropriate time. You know, so if you hear of graduates saying, "Oh, I wasn't prepared for this. You know, I didn't know about that, or I didn't know about that," that's fine. It doesn't matter. That's what your first few years of working are for, to teach you those things, and some of those things would be impossible to teach at university.
Learning of design and your pursuit and your interest, passion for the profession happens in university.
You don't learn everything at uni, but you get a really good grounding in stuff that you don't learn so much on the job, I think, in the design, in the thinking. And then all the technical stuff and the other things that you don't learn at uni, you really pick up from people that you work with. I think that's the key, is tapping into the right people to learn what you can from them.
I don't think any course is ever going to properly prepare you for the real world. Obviously, there's an element of reality that would have been probably a bit more helpful if we'd learnt about that. One thing I would say about the interior architecture course is I feel like there could have been a lot more emphasis on the importance of work experience. And I ended up working in my final year at an architecture practice, and I think that was just so beneficial. You learn so many skills when it comes to documentation, for one, you know, and how to apply that knowledge into the real world.
I mean, architecture is such a massive practice that it would be impossible to compress that into 3, 4, 5 year university course and hope to prepare someone for practice in a way that they could be able to, you know, start up their own practice and do architecture, for example. But they can prepare someone for thinking and how you think about problems and your problem-solving processes. Now, those are the kind of things that you will take from your education and draw upon and use and refine for your whole career.
You learn so much actually working, all the technical stuff, like calling up people, asking for samples, working with clients, learning how to communicate better. We do learn that at uni. You do a presentation and you improve your communication skills. That's still different to working with clients, because clients will jump in like, "No, I don't like that." And you're like, "Okay, gotta change it."
It was sort of self-found work experience. It wasn't actually a component. I think for a lot of people that had either found it difficult to locate someone that would take them on for longer than a week, because otherwise it has to be paid work, found that really difficult. And getting your foot in the door is also another thing. So for me, Adrian was actually one of my tutors in third year, and had said to our group, if you're ever interested in work experience, come and have a chat. And that's really, really important. You know, seek out your tutors, particularly people that are working in practice, and get a bit of a feel for what different practices are like, how you know, what you want to work in as well. You're not going to know unless you try.
It didn't prepare us for what we do outside. That's the biggest thing that I've found, and that you can only really learn once you start working anyway.
I really don't think I learned until I landed in a practice. Yeah.
Industrial fans.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like...
Oh, that's right. Yeah, they did mention that, didn't they?
I just...
Circulation. That's what you only probably need.
One on each side, or just need one?
I think you probably just need one opposite the entrance, opposite the doors, because the doors are going to generate enough. It's just really pushing the air. Architecture really should embrace that opportunity to get people into studios and understand what happens there. Because even if you're hanging around in an office space environment, you realise that there's a lot more to the profession than you're given access to at university.
I have not worked on a project at uni that's had a budget. In my second year, I put in a kitchen bench made of solid rose quartz. So not till a bit later did I start thinking, yes, things are really expensive. And that's something I've only started thinking about from doing placements and working here. The beauty of interior architecture, the course that I did, was that it was so hands-on and it was so out there and experimental. And although we maybe started talking about client budgets and things like that, that really the world was your oyster and you had so much chance to push the boundaries and just do what you wanted, which I think in a sense was a really good tool to have, because it meant that, you know, getting into the profession, you aren't jaded by things like budgets, programs, fees, all of that sort of thing. The fundamental preparation really was the first 4 years of working. Your level of knowledge just goes from like flat line, just it's the steepest learning curve in the world. Yeah, and often I think that people in our profession after those first 4 years start to question whether or not they want to do what they're doing as well, because it's pretty tough, and a lot of that time is in the office documenting. I mean, you don't get a lot of exposure to clients as a young graduate unless you're an introverted. You know, you might be quite happy doing that. For an extrovert or a social person, it's painful to watch people coming and going from the office and you're stuck at a desk documenting. Maybe it will be a bit different now because I think the way of working is more collaborative, but it depends on the practice you're working in. And certainly here at Balquhidder, the collaboration is key to how we work. Yeah.
When you start a practice, you'll get taught a lot of what you need to know about just their way of working. You learn that on the job. It's a pretty steep learning curve when you get out of uni, but it set me up all right. But it's still a bit of a shock when you get into it. Yeah, different world.
Everybody is well aware that as a graduate, you're not expected to know everything, and it's just a way for you to kind of learn and then be shaped as well within the culture and the working environment that you're in.
Teaching us that design is a process as opposed to it being an artistic endeavour. Yeah, I always came out of it thinking it was more of a personal thing and an artistic endeavour, whereas design is actually a process and is a way of thinking, and I don't think that was articulated as clearly as it should have been, and I'm not sure whether that's still the case.
It taught me probably self-confidence in my design abilities, and if I wasn't convinced or passionate about an idea, it wasn't going to go anywhere. But the times where I was is probably where I got better outcomes and better projects as a result.
One thing I think that got me was the speed at which things happen in practice. That's probably the biggest thing. I started working for a small residential firm when I graduated. We were working for them while I was at uni. And not to say we were moving slowly there by any means, but it was a different pace when I shifted to a bigger firm. It blew my mind how fast things were happening all the time. The grounding that I had at uni was really good for that because, you know, the base skills that I had enabled me to adapt to that and to pick up the pace. So,
you know, we're coming out of uni, I was like, oh, it's going to be great. It's not going to be all-nighters anymore. It's going to be like 9 till 5. It's going to be awesome. So there's still aspects of, you know, having late nights, getting projects out, but it's definitely not as consistent as it was. There's always going to be kind of swings and roundabouts as to, you know, project deadlines, and I can say there's more structure in your day. You know, you get to work at a certain time, and you finish at a certain time. So you've got weekends, which is just the best. So I'm not having weekends before. So, like most people working all through your uni degree to kind of, you know, pay for all the stuff you're making and doing at uni.
And I do like the fact that I've put a note, you actually talked about ESD and brought it back to a maths system. So I like that you've actually considered nature in an ecological scientific sense, the water cycle, so that's a positive. Anyway, good work.
If you think back to year 12, the stress and pressure that sometimes parents and teachers put on you and like going, this is the year that defines you. Yeah. And then you leave year 12 and a year or two later, nobody really cares too much about what grade you did and how well you did in physics or chemistry or maths. And if you try and remember what Boyle's law was, unless you're actually doing a science degree, so these things suddenly become a lot less likely. Maybe that wasn't as important. And I think university is a bit like that too. Once you have an understanding of what the outside world is like, you come back to the degree and you're not quite so stressed that your presentation drawings are not absolutely 100% perfect, and you're not necessarily so worried that your theory isn't completely watertight. You're much more recognizing for what it is, and it's about an idea generation process and about putting together solid but not necessarily watertight concepts. No one's expecting you to be Le Corbusier or Mies van der Rohe when you're 21 years old. Those people do exist, but they are rare, very rare beasts. So it's much more about just trying to embrace the moment and enjoy it for what it is, because it is enjoyable. There is a lot to enjoy about an architecture degree. It's a lot of freedom that you're given and a lot of vibrancy in that degree and the thoughts that come out of it, and it's really exciting. It's a wonderful thing to do, but tempering it with a sense of that this is not the end of your learning journey. This is not this presentation. Yes, you spent until 3 a.m. in the morning, but this presentation is not necessarily going to define you as a person.
Really, like you just cruise through the term until there was a submission due, and then cram for the submission, get that in, and then go, whew. And then hopefully there would be a holiday. So it was just sort of a period of stop.
Well, I guess studio was more about designing something pretty, where actually working in a firm is, well, yeah, you've got to design something that's good, but then working out how that design's actually going to work, there's a lot more of that than what you learnt in uni.
Collaboration in our context here and what I've experienced in the past is much greater. So at uni, you're doing your thing, so you make your own decisions and it doesn't affect anyone else but you and your marks and your own portfolio. Whereas in the profession, it's not about just you and your decisions, it's about the team, it's about the client. Without that collaboration and compromise, you won't get anywhere. Real life comes down to money at the end. So you may make some decisions that you're completely sold on, but someone's got to pay for that on the other side. So you've got a responsibility to other people in the profession.